you will click on whatever that particular section is, which is important recent articles, and it will click you to the actual section. And so there it is, important recent articles. And then I have a whole bunch of them from all over the world. And well, I don't have anything in Chinese or, but that's what it is. And this time I only had one league notice. So I put that both in activities, league activities, and also the announcements, which is today, which is our meeting today. So the more I can get from you guys and from people in leagues around the state, the better it is for me. Then I don't have to spend time calling Google for what might be going on. So here's for my ask. Oh, yeah, and there's also recordings from different universities, Columbia University, Harvard, you name it, where there's some very interesting things. And some of them are in the recordings for some of them are in the recordings, which are past webinars. And you can also, I don't think you've sent it out yet, Marty, because he's in charge of pushing the button of sending it. But you can also see what's going on with United Nations COP29. That's under mark your calendars.
Yeah, it's all volunteer, as Anita said, so sometimes things don't happen right on schedule.
No, I have so much going on. Anyway,
Everybody does.
and so make it easy on us to publish your entry. Make sure your prose is carefully edited and ready to be published as is, so I can just cut and paste. And then when you send something, make sure that I actually have found it in my hundreds of daily emails. And also you can send it to ourclimateradar@gmail. That's where it's a good place to put it. And when you send pictures, please send as an attachment rather than embedding them into your submission. For some reason, Google doesn't like to extract them and put them into my newsletters. And so since this is a public-facing newsletter, carefully consider when inserting your private emails. Oh, sometimes people have announcements for, say, Mason County meeting, and they put in their own personal emails. If you can wiggle your way around that without putting your own, I would feel more comfortable. If that makes sense.
But it's up to you.
Yeah, yeah. It's not a huge thing. Oh, I put it in, this should have been up further, but anyway, and most of the issues I have, I get these huge selection of books, and some of them are kid books, so they're from all over the place. So you might be interested in that. And so anybody wants to subscribe, you go to the Who We Are subscribe page, and that's kind of a little bit about us. I don't have near the background that Marty does, but there's a will.
Anita is leaving us, so if we have any questions, be sure you ask them now. I guess
I can stay for a little bit, but I have to be down in Gig Harbor. It's about 40 minutes away at noon.
So Anita, have you had many articles on the marsh campaign to daylight the Edmonds Marsh and the efforts
No,
gone
no.
on against Unicol? Margie?
Well, maybe Anita and I should get to be friends and help each other out. I do the Sierra Club Snow Owl newsletter, so I'm very interested in your thought processes and how you're managing.
Uh-huh.
And I do get your newsletter somehow. I'm not sure how, but it comes and I'm always interested. If you are interested in information about the campaign to try to restore the seriously, seriously damaged Edmonds Marsh into a functioning estuary that supports salmon. I would be
Oh.
delighted to chat with you about that.
Interesting. So where around Edmonds is this?
Well, it's hidden back and behind a Harbor Square development. Most of us get close to it by going to exercise at the Harbor Square Athletic Club. But if you drive down 104 like you're going to the ferry, you drive right by it. It's just that you can't see it from the road.
Oh,
Are
and
you
so are
familiar
they?
with the restaurants down there, Anita?
Yeah, yeah.
Arnott's and Anthony's, it's right across the street. Right
Right.
across the street from Anthony's and there's
Oh,
just a pipe system right now that is a very narrow pipe system that connects the sound to the marsh. And it's an old thing and not nearly what needs to be done to increase the health of the marsh.
Oh.
Another great topic that we had last month for our natural resources meeting was the pollinator pathways group.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
I should have them get them to write you some things about their effort to create
Yeah.
pollinator pathways among communities so that we enhance the habitat for our pollinators. And it really was fascinating, this small group of women who have extended this effort. And they started just by putting in a garden at 21 acres together.
Oh.
And they realized how important the work that they were doing just there was. And they wanted to take it out into the communities. So they're Pollinator Pathways Northwest, and quite the valuable resource for that particular effort. So I'll try to see if they'd be willing to
Yeah.
write something for you, Anita. I think it would
Yes.
be good
Are
for
they
that.
involved in trying to get the chemicals, the glyphosates and so forth out of
Yes, they are.
stores?
But you know, they lean on us to lobby for them. To be honest, that
Oh,
was what
oh.
I took out of it. They are so stretched with just trying to teach people about plants and what they can do on their own, that when they came to us at the league, they really emphasized that to remove the pollutants, you know, it's amazing how many of the plants we buy actually have chemicals already
Yes.
in them.
Yes.
So when you buy from the big box stores especially, they're not necessarily just healthy plants, you know.
Correct.
They
Oh.
have various chemicals already added to them.
Mhm.
That have created resilience for them in some degrees, but which are lethal to our pollinators. So I thought that was interesting. And there is an effort, I think Valerie mentioned it to me after that they left, that an effort for us to lobby to prevent those chemicals in being used. So, and to encourage people to move away from, I mean, most of us are familiar with the Roundup story and all of that, but beyond that, you know, that there's quite a bit that needs to be. And she really was hoping that the league would take up the, you know, the that effort to think about that. So,
But she can send me information. And here's an interesting fact. I have a friend in Oregon who's a master gardener. She said the policy of master gardeners is not necessarily to avoid glyphosates and other toxins. So there's a section of master gardeners who actually use the toxins, the Roundups and such. And I thought, that's really surprising. So maybe, you know,
well, it is surprising because what I hear from the Snohomish County, and I go to their garden meetings and so forth, they are very big on sustainable and planting plants that are just going to be healthy regardless, and not I'm forgetting the term, but in a way sustain themselves without the use of chemicals. They don't completely rule it out, but they try not to encourage anybody to use chemicals of any kind. So,
So yeah, this was Salem, Oregon, so.
yeah, no, this is
every
our,
day.
I know of Snohomish County, and
Mhm.
I was encouraged to hear that too.
Yes.
So, thank you. Other questions?
I'm not sure if this is appropriate, but I'll throw it out there. I'm CCL's representative to Shift Zero, and I was in on their state policy meeting yesterday. They were saying that the fossil fuel industry is now celebrating the passage of initiative 2166, and they were like, that was the one that they called a gas ban. There's no ban on natural gas in the state, but they still wanted to push it as if it was, and now we're not going to be able to push the electrification issues that have been important to a lot of us. In any event, the message was that it looks like 2166 is going to be duplicated across the country by the fossil fuel industry. My thinking is that that probably has implications for all of our national organizations if we're going to come up with some kind of a remedy to address that. But anyway, is that the kind of thing you'd want in the newsletter?
Yeah,
I think,
all of it.
yeah, I think in that case, write something about 2066 and how it may be duplicated across, and what the strategies would be to fight that. And I think primarily is to preemptively tell the truth.
We're an affinity organization. We're not representing, but we are representing the truth of things and the scientific facts.
Yeah, thanks for that correction, Marty. 2066, 2117.
That's right.
Yeah.
20.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Anyway, yeah, I'll do some coverage of that in a minute here.
So they said no to
what
it.
you meant, Mark. I put 2066 down there. Yeah, no, I knew what it was. Moving on.
Okay.
Anita, any other, Mark, thank you for that question and for that information.
Yeah.
That was not knowledge that I had not been aware of. All right, Martin, who's up?
Well, I'll be up first, and I'd like to say perhaps that unless there's an urgent question, maybe retain the questions either in chat or in your own notes, and we'll deal with them at the end because they might get answered. But if there's something urgent, raise your hand. And Joan, if you could monitor whose hand is raised or at the top, we could deal with something that's really urgent on the questions. But as we introduced ourselves a few minutes ago, we have the three issue chairs on environmental issues with us here. And first of all, there's overall results of the 2024 election. As you probably know, Washington's mostly unchanged. It looks like the latest I heard was maybe pick up one senator, the Democrats, I should say, not me, will pick up one senator and one representative in our legislature. And of course, the Democrats retain the governor's seat. And the lands commissioner remains a Democrat. Well, let me say I think a more pro-environment than we had the last land commissioner. And but there are some federal changes too, and some of the campaign rhetoric, possible exploitation of federal lands, continued federal support is questionable on a lot of things, and we may experience some curtailment of things like the Inflation Reduction Act. But it's probably just curtailment. It's not revoking it, because a lot of the conservative states are being improved by it, and they like it so far. So first of all, climate and energy, and we've had a lot of success in the last half decade, even more, with bills passed that move us towards our reduction in our emissions in the state. And these reductions are what are in state law, that line pushing them down from the 1990 levels to 95% below 1990 and net zero, which means we'd have to do offsets to get the last 5%, at least in that time. But it's a big challenge, but we've been making steady progress there. And few things that might be a little affected by it are the clean building codes and building performance due to what Mark brought up, the 2066 passage, which will constrain, at least for a few years, the ability to have codes that encourage electrification over methane or natural gas energy. And let's see. Here we go. What did happen was the repeal of 2117, a repeal of the Climate Commitment Act, failed, as you know by now. So the fees on emissions will continue, and that will encourage emission reductions in our state. And the revenue from those, from the allowances will continue and fund transitions of energy sources like transition to electricity, continued conservation efforts and restoration efforts. For example, there are a lot of things going on in the Climate Commitment Act, a lot of money and a lot of individual projects. The 2066 did pass, and it prohibits utilities from planning for electrification transition, and it prohibits the local governments from offering incentives to transition to electric energy away from natural gas, and from regulating a natural gas service for future buildings and such, or the resulting pollution from that. And so it will require state building code revisions, because we've been making progress on the building codes there. And it reduces our options for complying with the Clean Energy Transformation Act, which is to get all the fossil fuel energy out of our grids. And that was going to finally occur in next year. But it reduces options for that effort. There are influences from the federal election that will come down to us. There have been conflicting statements on the priorities so far coming out. It has, it's only been less than 2 weeks. There is expected an increase in favor for modular nuclear reactors. Now that has some mixed opinions around even our state, because nuclear is still seen as a problem, both in cost and in spent fuel. But I think we can expect the new administration to favor those. They also promised to return to selling natural gas internationally, and that will result in a price increase for American consumers. So whether they'll really follow through with that, who knows? And then Elon Musk is apparently on board, and he may sustain the support for electric vehicles, which the new president has disparaged, and even chargers in some fashion. So, all of this is unknown, how it's going to sort out, because it's such an unstable collection of administrators. And then as I said before, the tax credits for the Inflation Reduction Act on clean energy are popular in red states because they've brought jobs and income to their states. And so how the new administration will adjust those is a question as well. Now, for us in Washington, we have legislative opportunities, continued adjustments in the CCA, because it is a complicated law, and we have to even watch how we invest the money. We still need to energize the EV transition. School buses are in play now, and I hope legislators look at expanding that. Small trucks and cars, of course, and charging systems, which is an important factor in promoting people that would otherwise be hesitant to buy an EV. The one thing with all the options, fewer now from federal, but available, especially through CCA, it makes money available for improving installation in homes, transitioning from methane heating to a heat pump, and other investments in our building infrastructure. But it's complicated, and they proposed in the legislature for the past few years a navigator, a web-based system that will show the funding available that individual homeowners or small businesses can get from CCA funding to improve their own buildings and houses. We're also going to look at greenhouse gas emissions from other sources other than methane and carbon dioxide. Some bills have been promoted or proposed in the last few years on that, and they haven't gotten through yet. So that's another opportunity. Expanding the ability for community solar projects, bigger projects, and incorporating more people eligible to join them. That was a bill the last two sessions that failed to get through. So they may look at that some more in the legislature. And then we've had several tries at electrifying small internal combustion engines, such as lawnmowers, weed whackers, and leaf blowers, especially. Those typically run, or a lot of them run on 2-cycle engines, which put out a lot of pollution in communities, in neighborhoods and such. And but those bills have failed so far. That did depend on incentives, financial incentives. So with the budget problems, that may not be looked on well, but I think it's an opportunity for a variety of reasons. And then reduce methane energy where possible, even under the 2066 constraints. And I don't have any details on that right now. But as I said before, additional adjustments and refinements of policies, one that comes to mind that was passed last year, but a lot of planning is required, is joining the allowance markets from Quebec and California, maybe some other places. That will help stabilize the CCA allowance markets, the prices during their auctions, because they tend to be a little unstable, which is spooking the people required to buy the options, or the allowances, I should say. Challenges we have the state budget, as we talked about a bit, but the CCA in particular is somewhat independent from the state budget constraints, because it specifies how the revenue is being invested. It does not go into the general fund. There's opportunities to expand policy coordination among the state agencies. That is also a low budget action we could take, just to make sure the state agencies are coordinated and not working against each other, or at least using their policies to make some real progress and refine the policies, actually. There are continued challenges for the electricity transition, and part of the plan for the state is to purchase, as we do now. We get some electricity from Montana in their coal-fired plants so far, and now in wind energy as we transition away from coal. But it's going to take some more transmission infrastructure, the big wires, and permitting still takes a long time. And since it's crossing state lines, it may be more difficult with an administration that is unknown whether it would support such things. So that is a challenge. Incorporating distributed generation in the utility operations. Utilities tend to be conservative with a small c. They don't like disruption to their business plan. And what I mean by distributed generation, houses with solar panels on them, or buildings with solar panels and batteries perhaps, Virtual power sources, which is when a utility can ask a homeowner to, well, turn off your heat pump for 15 minutes so we can balance the load. And so it works somewhat as a virtual power source, and that's being experimented with in California right now. But that's an opportunity to get our utilities on board with that. And 2066 hinders planning for this, unfortunately. Because it prohibited the utilities, it's PCE in particular, the biggest utility in the state, from doing planning that would incorporate that kind of thing. Demand for electrical power will increase with expanded across the country, and that will affect us. Expanded artificial intelligence centers and other data centers. EV charging, we'd like that to increase, but that will increase the power load. And I expect, and many people expect, a preference for heat pumps to grow as their performance improves, the performance benefits are recognized, and they work, the advanced heat pumps work even in the colder parts of our state. So we also have opportunities for climate advocacy everywhere. And I know Snohomish County in particular is a paragon of environmental projects and attitudes and focus. But if you'd like to get involved in statewide, there are still opportunities without actually being an issue chair, but that's also a possibility. But I would say if there's a bill in the legislature that you're particularly interested in, focus on it, monitor it, analyze it for me if it's in climate or in another area. And that will enable me to have better information, more complete information. And so we talk periodically about how that bill is affected by other policies and other conditions. Another area is to track environmental justice in our bills, and the HEAL Act in particular, how we're complying with the HEAL Act, which was passed several years ago, to ensure that our climate environmental policies were benefiting overburdened communities and communities that have been ignored or experience a higher level of pollution or other environmental type challenges. So, but we do need to monitor the bills that we pass and how they're implemented. And our Clean Energy Transformation Act is to get all the fossil fuel out of our energy or electricity grid, and of course the utilities push back on that periodically, but we could sure use somebody that's monitoring compliance with that. Assessing the usage of carbon offsets in Washington. Carbon offsets are seen by some as a silver bullet, but I think they've got a lot of problems, and I'd like to just get summaries of the truth of that, how they're working in Washington, who is making them available, and follow other organizations that lobby on climate, and that both conservative, business-oriented ones and more what we consider the environmental lobby. And what are they, where are their focuses and what are they doing? I do a certain amount of that. And Murphy does a certain amount of that as well. But if there is an organization outside our normal coalitions, that would be useful. And so with that, I will pass it on to Kate. And Kate, I will flip slides for you.
Excellent. Great. Thanks so much, Marty. It's good to talk to my gang in Snohomish County. I think you know that I am the issue chair for Forest now for the League of Women Voters of Washington. So you'll probably recall that in May of 2023, the state league resolved to support measures that protect and restore mature and old growth forests and reform the adaptive management program and enhance community resilience to wildfire. Next slide. Since then, our advocacy in the legislature and at the Board of Natural Resources has been based on the League's careful study and member consensus. In January, we testified in support of the Green Amendment in the state constitution. And that amendment elevates our right to clean water and clean air and a stable environment to an inalienable standard. It reinforces the responsibility of the state to safeguard the environment for the benefit of its citizens. It didn't get out of committee last year. It will be reintroduced this year. In February, we did have a win. We asked the House to support funding in the substitute capital budget for mature forests and for trust land transfers. We asked for 25 million for the purchase of replacement trust lands to preserve mature forests in Washington through the Natural Climate Solutions Account, which is part of the Climate Commitment Act. 13 million was funded for that. And we asked for the supplemental funding of $8 million for purchase of replacement trust land for the preservation of trust land transfers, which is another separate program with similar mechanisms, but takes separate allocation from the legislature. There were over 30,000 comments submitted to the legislature during the legislative session about the opportunity to protect mature older forests with the Natural Climate Solution funding. So we did it. A lot of people did it. It is in process. We still have a CCA, so there are some more opportunities there. But we testified several times to at the Board of Natural Resources. In March, we requested that the timber sales on mature forests on public lands in Washington State, in particular, the timber sale called Stille Revisited, which, and also Ridge Ender and also Bologna, all three of them in Snohomish County, scheduled for auction in May and June. In May, we requested that the BNR cancel 6 timber sales, and we noted that the League of Women Voters of Snohomish County has been advocating for the protection of mature forests in their county for many months, and that the Snohomish County Council wrote unanimously to the Board of Natural Resources asking for participation in the Natural Climate Solutions program to protect mature forests in Snohomish County. The league also, State League also wrote to Governor Inslee and asked that he weigh in on this issue with the Board of Natural Resources. In June, the league wrote to the BNR to urge the preservation of a minimum of 10 to 15% of our mature and old growth forests. And that's required in the 2006 Policy for Sustainable Forests. The policy requires that the agency develop a plan to restore old growth conditions across a minimum of 10 to 15% of state forest lands before logging any mature or structurally complex carbon dense forests. Next slide. This month, the league wrote to the Board of Natural Resources, again, asking that they follow their own policy for sustainable forests. And we ask that the board defer auction on all mature forests on public lands until it's identified, mapped, designated, and protected 10 to 15% of these forests in all of the planning units as required by that policy. And we said that these maps should be readily available to the public, and they should not include stream buffers, roads, parking lots, power line corridors, rock pits, unstable slopes, and other areas where trees will not grow, like talus slopes and cliffs and balds and marshlands, or marble murrelet or spotted owl habitat. The legislature is gearing up, and Governor Inslee will submit his budget. I'm not sure whether his budget has been submitted yet or not, but our president, Mary Coltrane, wrote to the governor last month asking that he include $30 million in his budget for trust land transfer program. Next slide. So coming up, we are working hard to educate ourselves on forestry ideas. We need to think long-term about how we would like to see our state forest lands managed into the future. And there are people working very, very hard to, in the legislature and with the legislature to solve this problem. And there are a series of tools available to DNR to diversify its revenue portfolio and generate short-term money. One effort is to ask the legislature directly to compensate to junior taxing districts for the short-term loss from deferring timber sales. Another tool is to assemble pre-sale terms in each regional office to create local work groups. We almost have a local work group, but it needed to be incorporated into, we in Snohomish County, incorporated into a broader stakeholder group. But they are working to form these groups in each county and immediately begin planning timber sales in younger forests for timber production. Washington Conservation Action, Conservation Northwest, the Center for Responsible Forestry, and others are working really hard to propose legislation and budget provisos. We really need to help our new Commissioner of Public Lands amplify the local efforts to protect mature forest and to support discussions at the state level for a pooled timber trust managed by DNR. There is a group working on this. They refer to it as a rural resilience trust. DNR would purchase new lands either with state capital funds or some mix of private and public funds. And then we are going to present a webinar on 11/21, and I will put in the chat, a link to that if you'd like to register for that on 11/21 at 7 o'clock, Your Power at County Governments, How to Help Guide County Policy Around Forest Management at 7 o'clock. And we want to encourage all league members to consider advocating for issues they're working on in their county. We can change policy in our counties around forests and around education or criminal justice or childcare or healthcare. We, in this webinar, will be using forest protection as an example of how this work can be done. Vanessa LaVale has been working and actually contributed to the production of a forest management plan in Thurston County. She'll be joining us. I'll be talking about our experiences with in Snohomish County, and Brelf Roby, Executive Director of the Center for Responsible Forestry, will be talking about strategies. So I hope you'll join us for that. That's it for me.
Okay, so I'm the one dealing with more a different kind of human impact in terms of all the goods that we wind up having in our society. And the league has had positions dealing with managing this waste since the mid-70s. And it's this human impact of not only dealing with the waste, what resources are extracted to create the products that we do have, and then to dispose of them at end of life, and hopefully we get as much out of it as possible. So we're looking at a variety of responsibilities and product stewardship in the legislation in Olympia. So next slide. So recent legislative accomplishments, I'm just going to pick it up since 2020, since it's shifted and become a little more active. We've had the reduction of single-use plastic waste through drinking straws, cutlery, and grocery carry-out bags. You'll probably note that, I still have trouble with waiters putting the plastic straw in my water glass when I go out, and it's very interesting to inform them. Did you know that's against the law? So you can get straws if you want them, but they're not supposed to automatically put them in. Our grocery carryout bags took several years to get in place due to the onset of COVID. And the interesting part about that is the bags that replace them are now heavier bags, and for them to be really productive in terms of a recycling, they need to be reused about I think it's about 15 times. You'll note that they're stronger bags than they used to be. So it's an interesting conundrum there. In 2022, we started looking at the reduction of organics to the landfills and thus reducing methane emissions. And then in 2023, we managed to get any number of bills through the state legislature, and establishing an advisory committee to standardize composting. One of the things that they've been trying to do is get, not only in composting, but in recycling and any number of things, get a standardization so you don't have to wonder what you can do when you're in what area of Washington. And along with what Joan was talking about earlier with chemicals in plants, we have chemicals in cosmetics. And so legislation was passed to eliminate the sale of cosmetics with certain toxins. But I'll talk a little bit more later. What do we do to make sure that that's really happening? One of the big bills that passed was 3 ways to reduce plastic pollution. And you may remember that this established having refill stations at drinking fountains where there are new builds, and then the phase out of the mini toiletries in the hotels and overnight facilities. And the third one in that package was to ban foam-filled dock floats so that we don't get little bits of styrofoam floating around in our waters. Established a responsible environmental management for the recycling of batteries, and then initiated a study to for the recycling of wind turbine blades. And then in 2024, we moved into banning lead from cookware, and then reduced impacts of lighting products. And these are the lights that are out in your parking lots and streets and that kind of thing. And then even further did more to reduce the organics from landfills to reduce the methane. And surprisingly, one of the largest categories of waste there is our food waste, whether it's from food that has gone rotten in your refrigerator or food that doesn't get served. There's just a great plethora of areas to begin looking at to be more responsible in dealing with the food waste. So looking into the next year, next slide, please. We know that the WRAP Act is back. This actually started, and the WRAP Act is the Washington Recycling Act, and is our Extended Producer Responsibility Act to help get the producers of these materials to help pay for the recycling and or reduction of such things. So it started in 2021 was when a version of this was first introduced, and it keeps coming back and changing. And some of you may remember last year it was the REWRAP Act, and it also included a bottle bill. Looking forward into this year, that bottle return portion of the WRAP Act has been removed, and it will just be the extended responsibility on the paper and plastics. And this has resulted in a shorter bill that it's now only 50 pages long instead of over 100. And so hopefully can get some further action on that one. It will again be championed by Representative Liz Berry. Last year, it did make it to the House floor. So that was the furthest it's made it yet. And so we'll see what happens. They just, the waste industry has a tremendous impact on the legislators and how this is, going forward. And Carol, I saw your question on the bottle bill. I have not heard yet if there is going to be a separate bottle bill or not. So we'll need a lot of stuff, as we've indicated, was kind of, I think people were just kind of hanging there, waiting till we got through the election to know what would be possible. But as soon as I know anything on the bottle bill, that'll be part of my reporting. So the next item that should return this year is the refrigerant recovery. It's a bill championed by Representative Dewar, and it passed the House in 2024 and then was stalled in Ways and Means before the session ended. And this in particular is a bill to separate out appliances, particularly our refrigeration as well as HVAC systems and such that have gases that are normally just vented into the atmosphere that are very harmful. And what it does is recovers those gases from the equipment before then the equipment is then hopefully recycled, because a lot of that has metals in it that can be recycled. This is also important because the supply of gases can be then recycled as well and put into new construction of items needing the refrigerant gases. So the thinking here is that we have to reclaim these gases in order to have enough supply for the existing buildings and refrigeration systems for their lifetimes. So those two will definitely cycle back. The next bills were bills that was a promise that after the regular batteries that we're all used to are getting the recycling programs set up in terms of a stewardship return program, that we also need to get something in place for the EVs, the car batteries, and for the electric cars. So that will most likely be something that will be coming up. Right to repair has wound up in the last two sessions, having traction and then not having traction. This is something that would allow people to get rid of the proprietary information on some of the goods out there for local entities to be able to repair some of those things that are closer at hand. And on the table have been particularly electric wheelchairs and some other things in the medical field. And it just makes it a more, oh, and farm equipment. I'm sorry, farm equipment was another one of the things. Items that, sorry, Mark, your chat just came up. What a great thing, National Brand Day. Okay, the right to repair, it certainly would help with a more timely repair of items and reduce the waste. And I think one of the more an interesting one that had hearings in both the Senate and House Environment Committees was the a fashion bill. We normally don't think of fashion in this way, but if you start thinking about the resource extraction that is required to raise the crops, do whatever to make the clothes in the first place, and then we wind up with the issue now of what's called fast fashion. We've gotten used to fast food, but now we have fast fashion. In other words, hand-me-downs are not as well thought of. Many people don't keep clothes. They just cycle it out really fast. And then the really disturbing thing is what winds up when you're cleaning out your closets, which I just did a whole lot of, and things that wind up going to your Goodwills out there, a very low percentage of those items are actually resold there. And what happens to a goodly amount of these textiles, they wind up becoming the problem of third world country waste disposal. And so it's beginning to look more, we all need to be looking more and more as how our lifestyle decisions are making some differences here. And I do want to go back to Mark also noting that God, how could I forget National Recycling Day? I was very much involved in programs on that in my professional career in terms of thinking about recycling. And I think the thing that we need to remember is that we're not going to recycle our way out of these issues that we have with our waste disposal. There's certainly a whole lot of other things we need to be doing to not create the waste in the first place. And that was always one of the questions I asked students when I was talking to them. What's, they wanted to always just say recycling is important. And I wanted to get them to the first R to me, which is reduction, and not creating the waste in the first place, not having that particular item. So just like Marty and Kate have shared with you, there are opportunities in waste division or waste diversion advocacy. And one of the things I wanted to stress here is that within our environmental team, you've met Marty and Kate and myself, who are issue chairs. We also have advocates working with us who do not necessarily, they don't speak for the league, but they help us out in following a particular issue. We have people that follow a person who follows shorelines, a person who follows the rivers, a person, we're working on wanting to get someone following river or water quality and that kind of thing. I'm forgetting one, Marty. What's the other one that we have a really good
there's agriculture.
Agriculture, that's the other one. Thank you. In our arena, and particularly, I got introduced through the ag thing by talking about the whole food waste issue, and that's certainly an area to go. So we do have advocates. We can always use more, as has been indicated. To actually monitor a bill and help us issue chairs out within our particular arena, or look in program in action, which is the state lead Bible in terms of the positions we have that we can and pursue, and maybe take on something that then your issue chairs can help give voice to. We just received, so secondly here, we just received information on amplified toxics. And there's a new toxics retailer report card out and a toolkit, and I'm going to be working with Anita to get some of that information in our climate radar so that it helps get the word out and find out, making sure that the products you're buying have definitely reduced those kinds of things. Of course, we are going to be needing to, one of the main things we've talked about in the past is, okay, we work really hard to get a bill passed, and then the next year there are more bills to be looking at, and we need someone to actually be following the implementation of programs that are getting set up. So things like what's happening with the new legislation in composting, and how is that working, and then monitoring the battery recycling program, and then looking at plastics. Certainly a movement to get rid of single-use plastics. I know we've got several people in the state that are very much interested in doing that. And I think one of the other things in terms of what your opportunities are not just in waste diversion, but any advocacy, is to plan to attend the League of Women Voters of Washington Action Workshop on December 7th. It will be a virtual workshop, and that's a Saturday. It'll be Saturday from 9 to noon, where you can learn more about, certainly we'll be back, and there will be others there talking about other issues, because I think we need to remember that each of us can't take on all the issues. We take one and others will cover other issues. So you want to share that information with the others in your arena, that maybe something else is a top priority for them, and there's a way for them to connect as well. I think that's all I have. We're open for questions, Marty, and
Yes, and further
Eric,
discussion and suggestions and that sort of thing. So
you want to stop sharing?
I can do that.
Anne,
Yes.
would you restate what the hours are for the action workshop? Did you say 9 to 4?
No, 9 to noon.
9 to noon, okay.
And I realized I wasn't as efficient as Kate to have the link all ready to drop in the chat, but if you go to the State League website and look under events and go to December 7th, you'll find the registration for that.
And you could put it in it's too bad I didn't know that.
Yeah.
First,
Well,
I
it's been one of the best kept secrets this
Yeah.
fall. I'm sorry to have to say. And
Action workshop has been longer in some cases, but having it virtually and whatnot, I think 9 to 12 is probably what most people are able to do just sitting there.
Well, there were some other considerations for the time as well, this time around. And so that's what it is this year. And will be a way to thanks, Marty.
Anne, I almost immediately, when you mentioned the last issue on fashion and recycling, did you know that Amazon has a new 20-second fashion program that they're putting out? And this is to sell, the whole purpose is to sell things that are very cheap and quote unquote, most likely cheaply made, and appeal to the people that do not like to go out and shop or who do not like to hang on to things or to shop in the reused places that they might be able to pick up things. And it's just, I don't know if it's just a symptom of our own culture or if it's a symptom of Amazon's business policies.
Well, that's why I don't shop Amazon. I am an Amazon
Denier.
non-user. Except sadly, sometimes that is the only way you can get some things, which is okay. So that's my personal bias. That's really annoying. And I wanted to go back. Now I can't remember who put it in there, but a number of young people, yes, are frequenting thrift stores and that kind of thing, but not enough. So but the one thing that I always found in talking with students, and I don't know, this could have changed, they did not necessarily, they were all for, saving the world, recycle or die, and, that kind of thing, and saving the world through many of the recycling things we've talked about, but then never made the connection to their frequent trips to the mall. That we certainly have become a very consumerist society. So
I think we also have to remember that Mark alluded to a bit that Big Oil will try to invoke the Initiative 2066 in every state they can. The Big Oil in particular, as you probably know, has had probably 100-year effort to turn our attention away from climate change and their responsibility for it and deny it in this case. And they don't even make apologies for it anymore because they know they don't need to. And you may know that the anti-litter campaign of the 60s was funded by the packaging industry that realized that if packages were strewn about the streets and the roads, that there might be a backlash. So they tried to turn the responsibility away from their own behavior to the behavior of those who they're purchasing it. And of course, we buy what's cheapest on the shelf, and we participate to some extent. But be always on the lookout for how you're being manipulated in advertising and expectations.
Well, it was certainly the oil industry that convinced us of the recyclability of all those different kinds of plastic.
That's
It just
the
takes time.
examples are many.
Yes, yeah.
Anita has something here too.
I
And
couldn't
then
find
Val-
my raise hand thing. Here's something that I was shocked at, my research of things. I think it was Chevron that had set aside some initiatives within its industry that were more climate friendly, and it was voted down by the shareholders. It's the shareholders oftentimes behind the face of the industry. And I know that there are groups like something about so we need to sow, SOW, the seeds we sow, and others that are embedding activists inside the shareholder groups. Unfortunately, the energy companies are put in as 1% of your overall portfolio. It's a real small part, and you don't really have much input. But there are groups out there that can embed themselves as shareholders and change some of this behavior.
Thank you, Anita. Valerie, your question?
Hi, thank you for being here. I just wanted to share, whoopsie, we were talking about the implementation of legislation, and it came to my attention through our food bank that our food bank wasn't aware that under the organics recycling legislation that they would need to begin actively recycling their organic waste, and they've been using a single dumpster for as long as I've been there. And so we've had some success, like speaking with Cedar Grove to get compost and recycling options implemented. And it came to my attention like how unaware of composting practices most of the volunteers at the food bank are, let alone the consumers. And so I see a real opportunity there for some education. And thankfully, both the Waste Management and Cedar Grove, they actually have education departments that come and share, how-to information with clientele. So I think there's a real opportunity there. And I wonder if our legislative crew, do you ever work with Waste Not Washington? I feel like they've been really, really instrumental in some of the same work that you're doing. And I'm curious what the overlap is.
I am not currently. I have in the past. They certainly provided some good education materials to use in the schools. Another place for people to learn more about, home composting is certainly through the Master Composter program that in some places is connected with the Master Gardeners and shepherded by the local extension office. In Spokane, where I was, it was the Master Composter program was under our solid waste department. And so providing so there's an understanding of composting. There are many people who don't want to be bothered. I always found it kind of cool to
It is. Well,
see-
and we have this huge opportunity because our schools are impacted by this shift with the organics
Right.
disposal law, as well as our food banks. Anyone, I think it's 3 cubic yards is the next tier level for this. And so, like, I see a huge opportunity for communicating and like reaching people in their households at a new level. And it's funny, people outside of the city of Seattle don't realize that everyone in the state is not required to compost. So I thought that was an interesting insight.
Well, and it's different. You have, because Seattle, City of Seattle has had compostable collection programs for quite some time. And, as opposed to actually encouraging home composting or, that kind of, so there's two different things. And, yeah. And so we're seeing the attempt with this legislation is to make this more consistent across the state, but realizing that when you get into rural versus urban areas, collection versus actually your own on-site composting, there's just a variety of things that can happen. So.
And here's something that I do know, that in Kitsap County anyway, and I don't know about more rural areas, the waste management or unmanagement, they do not accept recycle, and I should say yard waste from apartment buildings or businesses. And that won't be, it's like 10 years in advance that they will be instigating those programs if they ever do. So, the thing is, if you have schools like in my area, there's a lot of poor kids that are in apartments that go to the schools, and, recycling is not something part of their lives, or will be for the long time.
It will be now, because the schools are going to be required. It's
Right.
just a matter of our school districts are behind in knowing they need to do it too. So there's a huge opportunity there, even our apartment dwellers. On the
Nice.
happy side.
And
Nice.
I'm surprised, Anita, because I know my son's lived in an apartment for years and they have bins in the back for recycling as well as for waste. So they do recycle even though they're in an apartment. And
In Kitsap?
no,
It all
yeah,
depends
Health
on the
and-
jurisdiction
yeah,
you live in.
Exactly.
Right.
Santa Monica. But
Yeah.
I know it's possible because they do it down there and it's not a huge burden. I mean, they
Yeah.
just have, as we do, the different trucks come around to pick up.
I think it's waste mismanagement in our area.
Right, well,
It's a problem.
right,
Now, compliance will always be a problem because there's not enough professional monitors to cover everything, very little. So I would say, when you see something, speak up, when you see something, say something. And just like Valerie was implying, inform the organizations who are trying to do the right thing and just don't know, or are too exhausted to doing other things, to add one more requirement. And even I shop at PCC in the Seattle area, and they have bins for, you can buy lunch there. They have bins for what goes in the compost, what goes in recycle, what goes out the door, and still the people shopping at PCC don't get that right. I see all kinds of mistakes, in what goes into the bins. And I don't think they're trying to be aggravating, but it's hard for everybody. This is a difficult area when we're not used to it. And so it's up to us to some extent to speak up.
Martin, I heard something positive through the back door on NPR about the issue of the fuel, the oil companies going wild with drill. This was the take. This was from the business people. China, as you know, has been struggling with their economy, and they are not buying as much fuel, and the people have turned, when they do buy cars or they can afford, they buy the electric vehicles because of the gas crisis in their area. And people are transitioning to hybrids. I mean, they tax me extra for owning my hybrid in the state of Washington, right? So that they can make up what they're missing on the fuel income that they used to get. And as a consequence of this lower demand, the fuel companies may not saying that there's but they may not want to drill and increase their output because it's driving, and then the OPEC group has met the same kind of crisis. I mean, Saudi Arabia is trying to build a new city, and they're having struggling problems because the price of oil has gone down. And as long as that price of oil goes down and the demand goes down, they're business people, and they may not want to increase the amount of their product. So so it was a hopeful thing, you know, kind of, as I said, through the back door, but looking at it through the business angle, you know, the more good you can do on the driving down the demand, it sounds like there might be a positive and not.
Yeah, I think that has been mentioned, that approach or opportunity, in that since EVs are seen more and more as better than internal combustion engine vehicles for a number of reasons. I mean, there are some challenges, you know, recharging, but they say they're more fun to drive. You don't have to take them into the oil change, and very little repair typically is done. Therefore, and for solar panels on your roof and wind turbines and such, their economics will overtake the fossil fuel industry. Now, the timing is what is our challenge now, because it has to happen at a very fast rate. But ultimately, just the economics will overtake what many of the things we're doing to pollute the planet. So that is good news. And there's going to be a real struggle, I think, in the new administration, because their policy statement is they want to reduce the cost of petroleum by half in a year. And so the oil companies apparently are saying, wait a minute, I don't buy into that.
Yeah, Elon Musk for one.
Yeah. The other, I think Nancy Johnson, who represents the Sierra Club with us, or comes in, and she's been very adamant too on this electrification. And once she put into the chat, they have a kicking gas info session. They've been doing one a month, and she has a link to the next one, which will be Wednesday, November 20th at 6 p.m. To try to get more and more people to convert over to away from gas into an electrical grid and so forth. So that's available for us to look at. And Anita, you might want to, take a picture of that because it's important to let people know about that effort. So thank you.
About which effort?
Huh?
About which effort? Take a picture of what?
The Kicking Gas monthly
in the
online
chat.
info.
Save the chat, Anita.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Everybody knows how to save the chat, I hope.
Yeah, because it's changed. It took me a while to figure it out.
Yeah, they moved the three dots from the bottom to the top.
They have changed a lot of those different things. It took me a while to get all those buttons down too this time. So
what is the status on the postal system? I lost some of my chat here. Of the postal service trucks, I put that into chat.
Oh.
Does anybody? I know that it's going to go more in the future, but I don't know. I don't know what the time agenda is for that. With DeJoy, anything's possible, but
Anita, I can't answer your question. I'm not sure Ann knows the
No,
answer.
I don't.
Martin either. On the postal trucks and the changeover to EV.
Anyway, I have to go.
Yeah. Do we have more questions for our guests today? I did want to mention Steve was going to do some things on transportation for us right off the get-go, and I'm losing a lot of my people that make reports to us here at the end. And he and his wife Jody have been instrumental over the years, Jody Trotwine and Steve, in following the bills that you just described and getting members of the league to take that on. They used to meet before they had so many, well, before grandchildren, I think it was. That's been increasing. But they used to meet down at the food court, which is not the safest place to meet anymore, but at the Alderwood Mall. And people would discuss the bills that they were following. And so they stayed on top of those bills for the legislative session. And that is something that I don't think Jody and Steve are going to follow through with this particular year. And it would be definitely, I'll let him speak to that, but it was.
Well, the only thing I can say is that over the course of the number of years that we did that, the membership would change considerably. And the last time we had it, which was the last session, there were just a very few people there. And so we thought it was more cost effective for our time and effort and the time and effort of the few participants that we could just continue it on our own then. So.
Well, what,
Mark,
Steve,
did you have
yes,
your hand up?
Steve, what I'd like to say there, if you are going to continue that and focus on environmental issues, Ann Murphy leads the green team, coordinates the green team, which is all the environmental issue chairs. And as we talked about getting advocates on some of these bills, you could join us. We meet on Fridays by Zoom during the legislative session, and you could report on the bills that you're following, and that would be a benefit.
Well, where Steve has been just key because they're so closely linked. He is our transportation voice lately, and I've invited him to our natural resources meeting because so often the legislation affecting transportation, of course, is key to the environment as well. And he has been keeping us. I would hope Lael White would also have been here today because she speaks for the rail. She's very embraces that issue, the issues surrounding the rail.
Rail efficiency and
right, and additions. So she anyway, she did give us a link in her email to me that spoke to what their hopes were in the legislative session coming up, but not necessarily what the particular bills would be. And I think that will be forthcoming.
So Joan, I'm sorry, I can't find my electronic hand. I hate it when it's always different. But along with the action workshop that the State League offers, there are some other opportunities to keep apprised of bills during the session. One, of course, is the legislative action newsletter that comes out weekly during the session, and everyone should be getting that with the various issue chairs' recommendations for signing in on bills that the league is following. And then another great discussion group that we think is still continuing, and that's the ACT, that it's a Monday morning meeting to discuss and learn more about various bills. It's an online thing. And I don't, Marty, have we gotten more information on that for this year? Do we?
Yeah, their leadership is struggling a little bit with personal challenges right now. So they're looking for ideally just a coordinator to set up the meetings and host the meetings. And that would be, not create content or anything, but so we probably need to beat the bushes for someone who could help them take over. I think they are doing that too.
But be on the lookout for those opportunities to learn more about specific legislation. And I know other local leagues have weekly meetings as well to discuss bills.
So Lael White's email is shared by Julie down there, so to find out more. I don't think Carol McMahon has already said thank you to all of you for being here today. We have other business that we usually discuss during this time and try to take. I'm losing a lot of my. I think that we had a number of new members actually here today, and I wanted to make sure that you knew how much we appreciated your being here. And I'd like to continue with the rest of the gang here, doing whatever it is that we need to get done, and let you have the rest of your morning.
Well, thank you very
for
much.
the opportunity.
No, I think knowing about the action workforce is workshop is really important, and I'm just pleased that you were able to come today. You do so much for us, and I know it's not easy. And when you're moving, it can't be easy at all. And we do appreciate all of you and the work that you put in on behalf of the environment. It's so important, and thank you for representing the league's positions in Olympia for us.